I started as the prosecutor here in 2021 and had the privilege of taking over the office at a time when previous administrations has really put an emphasis on the importance of making sure that we were ready in the unfortunate event that we might have a mass fatality, mass casualty event here in Maui County. And I continued prioritizing that level of preparation for our department. I was very fortunate that within the first year of my appointment in 2021, I had the opportunity to select a new director of victim witness services, and was really lucky to be able to convince Anita Ahuja, who at the time was working in California, to come out and be my director of our victim witness services division. And for those of you who know Anita, she has this incredible background in mass violence and victim services response. Just a few weeks before August 8th, 2023, Anita had taken a job with the FBI, and she had vacationed out her last 2 weeks for a smooth transition. But as you'll see here in a bit in this presentation, we were real fortunate to be able to have her come back and help us out. So a little bit about Maui. So Maui County, or Maui Nui, encompasses the islands of Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. We are the only tri-island or multi-island county within the state of Hawaii. There's only 4 counties. We encompass all 3 islands. We have about 165,000 permanent residents here on Maui. At any given time, based on the time of year and the amount of tourists we have on island, we can have as many as 230,000 people on island at any given moment. As you'll see, and I think this played a huge role in the decisions I made very early on in the immediate response to August 8th. Hawaii is the most isolated major population center on the face of the earth. We are just under 2,400 miles from the coast of California and just under 4,000 miles from Japan. So, you know, when we prepare for major events here on Maui, or in the entire state of Hawaii, we do so knowing that help doesn't just come tomorrow. It is going to take some time. And then, of course, when we talk about the August 8th fires, most people immediately are aware that Lahaina was obviously the most devastated part of the island. You know, it's a site of great historical significance within the entire state. As everyone knows, the Hawaiian Islands were an independent sovereign kingdom up until the late 1800s. King Kamehameha the Great, who united the islands under one rule, made Lahaina the seat of the Hawaiian kingdom, which it was for about 50 years before moving to Honolulu. So as everyone knows, on August 8th, 2023, we had multiple devastating wind-driven fires across all of Maui. It wasn't just Lahaina, it included the upcountry areas of Kula and Olinda as well. While no lives were lost in those areas, significant structural damage occurred up there. Many homes were lost. There was also a fire in Kihei, which is just below the slopes of the Kula and Olinda area, but didn't result in any major property damage there. And then, of course, the massive fire in Lahaina. The conditions on August 8th were the type of conditions that led to this great devastation. I was on a flight from Molokai the day before when wind gusts were 65 to 70 miles an hour. It was an 8-seater single prop plane I was on, and it was the scariest ride of my life. The next day, wind gusts climbed to 90 miles an hour and really fueled these fires in all locations. So our incredible firefighters were fighting multiple fires all over the island under extremely dry red flag conditions, which ultimately led to the devastation and the razing of Lahaina town almost in its entirety. We lost 102 lives, over 2,200 structures lost. the damage was, it was devastating. There really are no photos that I can find or show you that capture what it looked like in the immediate aftermath of these fires, what it looked like to drive through, to walk down these streets, the smells, the sights. There's really no way that it can be captured. I came into work on the 8th and got a phone call from one of my employees, a couple of our employees that, due to the early fires that were raging in Lahaina, were being evacuated from their homes. They weren't able to come into work. Received some texts and notifications later in the day. This is not the first time this has happened. Lahaina, there's basically one way in, one way out. There's a rather treacherous route along the northern side of the island in the West Maui Mountains, but there's basically one way in, one way out. One of my deputies texted me later in the evening, maybe about 5:30, said she was evacuating her home a second time. Half of Lahaina town is burning. I'm writing you now because I don't know when I'll see you next. And at the moment, we didn't have a real sense of what was going on. When we got that text from the deputy, I almost thought that she was maybe exaggerating a little bit about half of Lahaina town being on fire. But of course, as the evening wore on and about 9, 10 o'clock, we learned that the entire town was gone. I walked in early the next morning and went straight to the Emergency Operations Center. And one of my fellow directors was on his way out of the building. He was in tears. And the only thing he said to me is, "It's all gone." I asked him if we had any reports on whether lives were lost. He said there were, but it was going to be devastating. And of course it was. I went into the EOC that day really not knowing what my role was, but just knowing that I wanted to be there. I sat through the morning briefing at 7 a.m. and then came back to my office, sat at my desk, and spent most of the day just trying to think, what can I do as the prosecuting attorney? What can I do to step into a role? And not in terms of investigations down the road or within our specific role as the prosecuting attorney. When you're in a community of 165,000 people, you've lost an entire town, there are significant fatalities. You want to get in there right away and do what you can immediately. And that was really where my mindset was. I started that evening by joining 2 other members from the mayor's office in the call center, stayed up all night. It was one of my longest nights in that first month. I think I was up for about 32 hours. One of my longest days, I mean. Spent the entire night in the call center fielding calls from all over the world and from Maui. And then went to the briefing the next day and heard that they were setting up a family assistance center. And the first thing I did was let them know that I would provide my victim witness counselors to be able to help be navigators for the Family Assistance Center. They were setting it up in the central part of the island in Kahului, where most of the shelters had been set up. Because my counselors were assigned down there, I went down to the center later that afternoon just to kind of check on them, make sure they were situated, that things were moving along smoothly. And within the coming days, quickly realized that MEMA needed additional support. So I got on the phone, was able to make my way through the labyrinth at the FBI and get Anita some reprieve and get her back to Maui before she officially started with them. She was technically still on my payroll as she had a couple days vacation still left. So we flew her back to Maui, and we flew her back just in a role where we thought she would be an important support system for the one MEMA employee that was staffing the Family Assistance Center for this devastating fire that had just occurred. DMORT was just on ground. They were getting set up. And once we got Anita in place and we're still in that support role, we quickly realized that the center was inadequate for what we needed to accomplish in terms of how many victims we needed to be able to service. And being centrally located became a major problem. We needed to get closer to the burn zone. Decisions, were not coming as fluidly as they needed to. And despite as much support as we tried to offer, I was able to pull the employee that was on point, on scene aside, and offered to take over the operation. And the reason we were able to do this is the amount of training that we had put into being prepared for this type of an incident if there was mass fatality incident on Maui. We had just had a training where I had hosted all of the prosecutors from across the state just 3.5 months earlier. And she very gladly accepted my offer. We cleared it with the incident commander and the mayor's office. And within 48 hours, we moved the Family Assistance Center over to the Hyatt Regency, which is just outside the burn zone. We seamlessly transitioned all of DMORT's operations, set up in a 3,000 square foot ballroom that Red Cross was able to secure for us. And really were able to ramp up both the DNA collection efforts as well as the just basic victim services that needed to be provided. We were running the center on point and in place in Lahaina at the Hyatt Regency for 21 days. We serviced almost 5,000 victims, coordinated with Maui Police Department, the FBI, DMORT, and others to seamlessly be able to both provide desperately needed services, everything from insurance to FEMA connections, SBA, funding, housing, employment, documents, and then also be able to help them, victims, provide the information and DNA samples necessary to help in the identification of victims. The fire didn't directly impact the court itself, meaning it didn't damage the courthouse in Lahaina, but the burn zone came right up to the edge of the parking lot at the Civic Center where the courthouse was located. It was closed from August 8th to September 5th. We were able to transfer all cases over to Wailuku. And then, of course, we were fortunate in that the only cases heard in Lahaina were misdemeanor and petty misdemeanor type cases. The courthouse that's out there only hears district court matters. We have a district court and a circuit court. Circuit court is our felony court. That courthouse, which is pictured there on top, is located over here in Wailuku. We have kind of a broad range of courthouses. As you can see, that picture on the bottom is the Hana courthouse, where cases are called by the clerk sticking his or her head out the window to all the litigants that may be outside waiting to come in.
1 minute remaining.
We coordinated with the PDs and the MCBA to put attorneys in the FAC itself and to be able to have a place where defendants could come, stip off their cases, make sure they got accurate court dates and resettings for Wailuku. There was really minimal disruption. Some cases ended up being dismissed, but the coordination between the PDs, the Maui County Bar Association, and our office, having them at the Family Assistance Center that we were running ended up being a big help to what we were doing in the larger picture. Lessons learned, leadership matters. And I don't say that meaning that I'm placing any kind of judgment or claim on whether or not I was a good leader in this situation. I'll let others do that. But, as leaders, we make hundreds of decisions every day. Most of them are small, a couple big ones. And in a moment like this, leadership matters and decision-making matters. And so stepping up in the roles that we are to fill whatever gap in whatever role we can, I think is integral when you're in an emergency situation. Preparedness is key. The way we were able to step into what many see as an unusual role in this type of a natural disaster or a fire-related disaster we were able to do it because we had prepped for this in a different context. It was very easy to pivot. We're a victim-centered, trauma-informed office. It was very easy for us to make this pivot and do this work. Something that our managing director told me early on in the response, and I held close and used as a mantra throughout, was the importance of identifying issues quickly, debating solutions quickly, and then making decisions quickly. When you're in a crisis and an emergency like this, the worst thing you can do is not make a decision at all. And we followed that mantra throughout the emergency response. And then the importance of being mindful of the need to pivot. We made this big pivot from centrally located FAC over to Lahaina, moving our operations across the island to from an area where we had power and connectivity to an area where power had just come on, and we needed to set up satellite connectivity and all sorts of other problems and headaches. But it was the right thing to do, and it was a pivot that we made in about 48 hours time, which I found to be really incredible. As unusual as this response might seem to some people, I think we were uniquely capable of being able to fill this gap. By early September, we transitioned our Family Assistance Center over to the Disaster Recovery Center that FEMA was running. They took over from there, and I couldn't think of a better place to finish this very quick presentation than showing you a recent picture of the banyan tree located right there in Lahaina. It is recovering just like the rest of our beautiful island community is. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all.